Hey guys, welcome back to another Lore Olympus discussion. I am Dazzling Kate. Welcome to my channel. For those who are new here, I dive into all things pop culture related, webtoons, Olympus, a lot of other webtoons eventually. Still working out the schedule for everything, but hey, here we are. Anyways, this discussion will be about how Persephone's story should have been better. Because due to the myth behind this, it feels so missed potential. It feels like it has so much missed potential. It kind of feels like a huge slap in the face for people who are into Greek mythology, for people who misinterpret, you know, Lore Olympus for being one by one fact true to the myths, and it's just like, no. There's a lot of changes that don't make sense that really give off that weird impression of what the hell just happened. So I'm going to go into it today. Now, I'm mostly going to be focusing on the myth, the abduction of Stephanie here. Now, you can definitely know where this is going. Now, let's focus on how the story is in Lore Olympus compared to its Greek myth counterpart of where the idea came from. Okay, so we'll start off with Laura. At Persephone moving into Mount Olympus and trying to fit in, be with the crowds and with study in college to do whatever, blah blah blah. She lives with Artemis, blah blah blah. Later on, she is dealing with Hades, who she met at the party, and then Apollo, who assaulted her. And it's really it juggles a lot of elements that just don't really either come back, or they just come back in a way where it's don't really do much for the story it's telling. And it's just a lot of romance between Persephone and Hades, blah blah blah. It doesn't really go much anywhere with these two. It's just like, oh, we're dating now, we're so happy together, blah blah blah. Even though the myth that it was based off of had a different story than Persephone getting away from her controlling mother, and her being a bad guy, Demeter, I mean, and dealing with her romance with Hades, who she loves very much, blah blah blah. Apollo being a dickbag, blah blah blah. And having the whole court thing be of her act of wrath, well, that was kind of eh. And then 10 years later, they meet up again and start getting back together, blah, blah, blah. Basically, it's not really entertaining. It's just like, oh, wow, the romance. Oh, wow, the cute. Wow, this. Blah, blah, blah. Nothing is handled with, well, anything. So, yeah, it's just kind of weird that they went this route of basically having Persephone deal with her only problems being, she defeated Kronos. Now that isn't really a actual story. It's interesting that she wanted to do a story like this. Kind of really messy. So Lore Olympus is basically a drama love story, and most of the time you just want to wish that the bad guys would actually acceptable. Maybe Kronos. Just have everyone be squashed by Kronos. Let them eat them. I don't care. Like a jerk, but it's the truth. The storytelling in this is eh. It's average-ish at best. And people just seem to like it because, oh wow, pretty colors. Oh wow, pretty shapes. And I'm not trying to shame Rachel's art style. It is unique. It does work for being unworldly, unhuman, having them be like the specific color. It kind of works. But we kind of need to see how it would like better just followed, because it seems like she knows what she's doing somewhat with some of the characters. Like the whole Arrow story was so shortened up than what it should have been. There was a lot of stuff that was taken out of that love story because Rachel just didn't want to adapt it. Just 80s. Because this expands into all the characters. So if you're gonna focus on all the characters, give us the story arcs, the full-on story arcs to show how powerful these people, gods and demigods, and whatever character you choose to adapt into the story. Give them their share of the spotlight and end it like you would with the original myths. Now, in the original abduction of Persephone, we have Persephone picking flowers in the fields with her friends, and it's just like, nice and sunshine and rainbows. And then out of nowhere, Hades, god of the dead, comes out of nowhere with his chariot, grabs Persephone, runs off back to home to marry Dora, even though she's crying out for her mom, crying out for Zeus, her dad. And nobody seems to have noticed that she went missing other than Helios, and I think I forgot which other god it was. I think it was Kate who noticed this happening as well, or was in the story as well. I'm a little bit messy with my knowledge of Greek mythology, so if I sound like I'm saying something wrong, or if I'm sounding like I'm like not mentioning another name or whatever, or a character that was there, then I apologize. I'm trying to simplify it in a way where people can understand that this isn't really identical to that story. Anyways, anyways. So Demeter is devastated. She is dealing with the grief of trying to find her daughter, going all over the world to find her, to know where she had been taken. Helios tells her, Hades came out of fucking nowhere, took your daughter, and ran off. She, you know, she can't exactly take her back because everyone else, like, she has to go through this whole system of dealing with the bullshit of the other gods. Since Zeus said, "Okay, Hades, you can have my daughter," I sound really confusing, don't? But yeah, she doesn't bother with her tasks. She's grieving. She's going through a roller coaster of emotions, and eventually, they have to like literally like the risk of their rituals and sacrifices to the gods, gifts to the gods are at hand if Demeter doesn't do her job, because without food, mankind can continue. So, Zeus is like, okay, buddy, give Persephone back. And Hades was like, no. And it goes on for a little while, and shit. Like, I'm simplifying it in a way where it's kind of casual and fun. I'm not trying to like mock the whole story. I'm just trying to be like, here's how it's entertaining. Eventually, Hades gives Persephone pomegranate seeds, and that is having her doomed to stay there 1/3 of the year, which is now winter. Blah blah blah, and 2/3 of the year she's with her mom, which is a fair deal. Now, does Persephone really love Hades? It's a really hard thing to say. Hades does cherish Persephone. It's just that there's like Menthe and the other female character. I can't remember her name. Let me look it up real quick. I know I sound like an idiot for not knowing everything about these details. I'm sorry. Okay, so oh my god, this is just literally going into the game Hades. I was double checking. Okay, just I'm an idiot. Do you guys know that I'm an idiot? Okay. because there was Mente and there was this other nymph who was the god, who was the daughter of the ocean god, Titan. I can't remember her name, but she was really important. That he even made a plant based off of her, and I really like that story a lot because it didn't have this idea of like how it should have. I know there was trying to find. Oh my god! I know, guys. I'm trying to find that name because I know there was another female character who was in a relationship with Hades. Okay, oh yes, yes. Luce, Leus. Okay, who's the daughter of Oceanus? His daughter fell in love with her, and like Persephone, kidnapped her and took her to the underworld. Oh yeah, yeah. It's the same thing. Same thing. Hades flirt, now returned to affection. Persephone found out and wanted dead. Did love him in some versions. Guides in others, Hades turned loose into a poplar tree. But but yeah, those two things have the same thing in common, which is basically they and use turned into plants because Persephone was pissed. But I do think the idea of having characters like that more involved in the, well, mythology would be more interesting than I think like that would have been an interesting character to adapt in romantic story, because yes, it is similar to Persephone's abduction, but it would have really been, take a different turn with it and make it before Persephone. If they were going to adapt this, I would have to think about that for a few few days. But again, there are other love interests aside from Persephone that Hades fell in love with, and the one with Persephone, it's feeling very very weird in the Greek mythology because it's a really, do they really love each other? Do they really not love each other? I want to say they love each other, but again, being abducted away from your mom, such, it seems like a really pushy thing for Hades to do. Like I'm not too sure what happened with Luce, especially considering she's the daughter of Oceanus. So I'm not really sure how Oceanus felt about it. I don't know. There isn't really much information on that, and if anyone does have more information about it, please tell me. Uh, but in the story of the abduction of Persephone, I think it's really weird that for Lore Olympus to adapt the storyline and not have no, Demeter be more worried, concerned. She just lets Persephone go to Mount Olympus without a second thought, other than, oh, Artemis is going to protect you. Oh, you're part of the Maidenhood Club. They'll protect you, even though they didn't. I mean, it's not their job to. It's not their, like, quest to do so. It's just really strange how they took this direction of basically making it so it's it's like, Demeter wasn't predicting this would happen. She did predict this. She predicted her daughter would get into some form of trouble, and that's what concerns her the most. And meanwhile, Persephone's too busy playing housewife with Hades, and it's just like, I really wish there was more focus on Demeter's character and story, because it doesn't seem to show that Persephone's, like, being her daughter means anything to all these other, readers, fans of Lore Olympus, they just kind of are quick to demonize Demeter because it's easier to do that than to understand a mother's grief, desperation, worry, concern, sadness, depression. That it's really hard for them to look into that. Yet they'll be like, "Oh, Hades has problems and he deserves Stephanie," even though it's like it's really weird to see this man daughter, and it's just like he. I guess it's perceived as him abducting her because she's older than her. She's naive and vulnerable in some ways. It doesn't really feel like it's touching that part of the you know myth at all. Just oh wow, look, it's this relationship that isn't really eh. It's not even trying to be the myth that it was based off of. And I'm not saying it needs to be 100% accurate to the source material. I'm just saying at least try and make it 70 or 80% of the source material, and you can do the other 20 to 30% off of whatever you fucking want. But it feels like a slap in the face because it doesn't take the character seriously. It doesn't take Demeter seriously. It doesn't take the myth seriously. It just kind of is this thing where it's like, well, Hades is the knight in shining armor and Apollo's the asshat who did what he did to her. And it's, they have to put the blame onto someone who isn't going to make Hades look bad, but it's like Hades looks a lot better compared to Apollo. And it's just they really should have handled this better in a way where it could have been an interesting take on the abduction of Persephone. Now, my personal opinion, I think they should have had the story play out with like, yes, Persephone wants to know what it's like, you know, being part of, Mount Olympus or outside of her mother's domain. Just wants to understand the other gods and such, get a chance to know them. Something of the sorts. And maybe she encounters Hades one day while he's on a task. She just, like, this is my own kind of idea. And she basically, wants to know about him because she's never seen a god like that before. And she tries asking him what he's like, what he's doing in general, kind of annoys him, and basic stuff that think, oh yeah, this young goddess is being annoying, better get going. And instead of like, I think it would have been more romantic if the abduction of Persephone was played out as this. Like again, I'm taking a different turn you know from what Rachel is doing with her story. I think it should have been something like, yeah, they're both in love. They decided to plan the idea of abducting Persephone to get away from her mom because she just wants to at least feel something for just a short amount of time outside of her mother's, domain. And she didn't think it would go this far with worrying all the other gods and making it difficult for humankind to just like, be affected by it. Demeter gets depressed, is looking everywhere frantically for her daughter, and over time Persephone realizes how fucked up she was to do that to her mother. And I think it would be an interesting idea to go with that instead of making it all this complicated bullshit that isn't really going anywhere. And, have Persephone realize the horrors of her mistakes as well as Hades, and yes, they love each other, but Persephone realizes, and for her mother, but they can't just automatically just hand her back because it seemed really suspicious if they did. So they formed a plan, something like that, something of having them be romantic with each other. They planned this for a long time, and then it backfired on them because it made them both look like shits, and they decided to try and fix things for Demeter, and I don't know. It would seem like a better story than what Rachel did. Just it's more or less more organized, staying true to the myth. And I would have loved to see how if Rachel had gone a different route with this, made this whole situation, because this story in itself, it can definitely be useful for, all the gods to be affected by this. There would be sacrifices, or know, gifts to the gods that they would get, because humankind would be at risk, and everyone realizing, oh shit, where the hell is Persephone? I would have loved to see all these gods affected by, oh shit, we gotta look for her. And they're all worried. Meanwhile, Persephone's just like, feeling like a, just being like, this is the best one I've had, and then not realizing how affected their entire plan backfired on them. Not thinking it would be this bad. That would have been more entertaining to have all these gods like worried and shit. And then you could probably brought in the court. Like, that would have been a better use of the court moments, instead of having it play out like it did in the comic. It was so horrible, like horribly bad, that it was just, ugh. This would have explained the use of using the court in the story. It would have, excuse that moment. It would have been able to, like, have Zeus and Poseidon basically take part of, judging Persephone and Hades for what they did. It would have definitely brought in the, know, Demeter and so many other characters to explain how it had affected their jobs, how it had affected their, like, day to day life. And, Persephone feel Hades feeling much more worse about what they did. That would have explained a lot more than, oh, this happened. It would have done a lot better for them than they did in the story. But hey, that's just my honest opinion. If you want a full version of this, I won't mind making another video about this. I just need to, like, write this all down and actually plan it out a little better for, like, multiple different seasons. I don't know. But hey, that's just my own personal opinion. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that subscribe button. It would mean the world to me. And stay safe, stay warm, and stay hydrated. This is Dazzling Kate, signing the hell out of here.